Afternoon. Welcome again back to Intel 450, and welcome back to the YouTube lectures. I know we've taken a couple weeks off from these because of the exam as well as the last week's frontline. So welcome back, and I just want to say that please use the YouTube lectures when you're answering questions on the discussion boards and the final exam. I just noticed on the midterm there were some people who ignored them completely, some people used them. It is your benefit to watch these and actually learn from them, take notes on these lectures and take it from there. So you all should have your midterms back to you. Some people did them really well, some people did well, some people need some improvement on writing. I'll just say that if you're going to write an essay, make sure your thesis is clear and make sure you're trying to persuade your audience of a certain point of view. If you think that Al-Qaeda did something right and Hezbollah did something wrong, or Hezbollah did something right and Al-Qaeda did something wrong, and that's your compare and contrast, make sure you delineate that in your essay and back it up with evidence. That is probably the most key point, and that's what most of you were graded on. So with that being said, just getting on to our counterterrorism section of the course, and today's topic is just on high-value targeting. Last week you saw a PBS frontline on killer capture on Taliban. You see how effective we've been on actually capturing leaders, but the bigger question is what are the second and third order effects of that, and that's what we'll kind of cover on that. And the bottom line is, does it work? Doesn't it work? Under what conditions does it work? So what is it? High-value targeting is targeting terrorist leadership, removing them from the battlefield, either through arrest or killing. Pretty straightforward. It's often a strategy, a specific strategy employed. It's what we're doing in Pakistan with the Predator drones. It's what Israel did against Hamas in the occupied territories. And it's what we did in Iraq in 2006, 2007. Specifically use our intelligence assets to go after leadership. Now, this is a very controversial point of view, and there's two kind of schools of thought on this. The school of thought that says it works, the school of thought that says it doesn't work. And for those who say it doesn't work, it's usually because it doesn't impact the underlying causes of terrorism. That you can't kill your way out of the problem, that if the problem is Israel's occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, that killing terrorist leaderships isn't going to do any good, that someone's just going to take the reins after you kill somebody. Doesn't go after the root causes, and you also often say, hey, you can't kill your way out of the problem. You have to address issues like poverty and address issues like underlying grievances. The people in this school also point to the fact that high-value targeting can actually cause more terrorism, especially if there's collateral damage from the high-value targets. And speaking from personal experience, this actually does happen. In Afghanistan in 2003, 2004, we bombed, because we didn't have enough troops on the ground, we bombed targets with F-16s and large JDAMs, and we oftentimes killed the target, but we killed a lot more people in the process as well, and this alienated the population. So that's one school of thought. It doesn't work. There's another school of thought that says it's an end-all be-all, that it works and we have to use it as often as possible. High-value targeting has several benefits. One, you kill the perpetrators. You cause some sort of justice to occur if you actually kill them or arrest them. Sometimes it's the only tool in the toolkit. In Pakistan, the only thing we can do is high-value targeting. We can't send troops and do large-scale counterinsurgency operations in Waziristan. Israel could not, well, they could send troops into Gaza, but they would have been too costly to do so. So high-value targeting is sometimes your only option. And then the other will point out that if you remove a charismatic leader, you can actually hurt the organization as a whole. There's a finite number of charismatic leaders. Osama bin Laden would be one. Al-Awlaki in Yemen would be another. And you remove them, there's no one that could take their place. No one who has the charisma. And this is true, and this has actually led to the demise of several terrorist organizations. So what is the right answer? Do we use high-value targeting? Does it work? Does it not work? Well, answer is kind of in between. It works sometimes. It works very well sometimes. It fails in other circumstances. The biggest example would be the drug wars. We've killed many cartel leaders. We've killed many other people involved in the drug war, and it has no impact on actually reducing the amount of drugs coming into the country or being grown in Colombia. There have been other times where we killed Zarqawi in Iraq, and that had no appreciable effect at the time on Al-Qaeda in Iraq. But then oftentimes it does work. We've almost crippled Al-Qaeda core in Pakistan because of our high-value targeting program. Hamas pretty much Israel pretty much destroyed Hamas as a terrorist organization due to the destruction of so many of their leaders, and that led to the safety of Israel's population. I just want to give you a little bit of personal experience. I would tend to fall into the camp that high-value targeting does work, and it's worthy of investing in intelligence assets, and it's worthy sometimes of the trade-offs that it might have. And I kind of center that around four key effects that high-value targeting has. The first is, as I said earlier, it removes a charismatic leader. Sometimes these organizations tend to be cult of personalities. Al-Qaeda in Pakistan was a cult of personality. I suspect Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is a cult of personality around Alaqui. If you remove that personality, the cult goes away. So that's one key reason. The second, and one that was kind of alluded to in the video last week, is that you actually deter second-order leadership from taking control. And what I mean by this is if your high-value targeting program is so effective, no one would want to be the head of Hamas or the head of Al-Qaeda, because that would be almost a death sentence. So not only do you kill somebody, you kill several people, but you also deter, for every one you kill, you deter 5 or 10 from desiring to rise up in the terrorist leadership. So that, I think, is the biggest effect that you can achieve with actually a high-value targeting program. Third key point is that you just keep the enemy off balance. If the terrorists have to worry about being killed, they can't plan. If they have to worry about their survival, they can't conduct next attacks. If they have to, if they can't travel from point A to point B in a vehicle because they're afraid of a Hellfire missile coming down, then they can't have a global reach. So, if a high-value targeting program is very good, you can actually prevent them from engaging in major level attacks. And then the fourth thing is kind of a little complicated, and I've done some research on this, but this is has to do with secession process in terrorist organizations. You kill a charismatic leader, you kill the first-order leader, the second-order leader, in order to rise, because this isn't a democracy. The vice president doesn't take charge. There's no vice president. It's how do you become the head of a terrorist organization? You become the biggest badass, for lack of a better word, biggest badass on the block. And sometimes you do this by engaging in mass violence, and sometimes you go too far. To those of you who don't remember this, as Sikh separatists in India, when their leaders were killed by the Indian security forces, their second-order leaders committed some violent, horrible acts that alienated the Sikh community in India. So the Sikhs had a general grievance with the Indian government, but after the Sikh extremists actually downed an Air India flight in 1985, which many, even in the Sikh community, thought it was gone way too far, the organization went into demise. And that was because the second and third order leaders had to prove their machismo, so to speak, by conducting these awful terrorist attacks against Air India flight, against some of the Indian civilians in the northern part of the country. So again, if you kill the first leader, then there's a succession process. This drives the organization to become even more violent, and eventually leads to its own demise. So again, with those effects can actually have a pretty detrimental impact on the entire terrorist hierarchy. So with that being said, why do some high-value targeting programs work? Why do some not? So let's say you're in Afghanistan now, and the boss tells you, I want you to set up a high-value targeting program against the Haqqani network. So what elements do you have to put together to make sure it works? One, I think there's probably 5 key elements. One, continuous attacks. This is probably the most important aspect of conducting a high-value targeting program. You have to hit a target, then hit another, then hit another, then hit another, then hit another. You can't just kill Osama bin Laden and rest on your laurels and say, hey, we won. You can't just kill Zarqawi in Iraq and say, we won, let's all go home. This is what Israel, best example is Israel against Hamas. This is what they did in 2004, 2005. They killed one target, then they killed another, and they killed another, and they made it so bad that no one wanted to be head of Hamas, because that was almost a death sentence. So that is probably the most important factor. Second most important factor is that you probably have to focus both on the mid-level and senior-level commanders. Can't just kill Zarqawi. You have to focus on those operators, those bomb makers, those financiers, the mid-level of the organization. Not necessarily the foot soldiers, not necessarily the guy who's going to be shooting you in an ambush in Baghdad, but the leader and then the mid-level commanders as well. Do that simultaneously, and you'll probably hurt the organization as a whole. Third most important facet is you have to coordinate with other counterterrorism measures as a whole. What the Israelis did is not only did they do high-value targeting, but they built a wall between Gaza and West Bank and Israel itself. This actually cut the sanctuary off and actually isolated the Hamas, so that high-value targeting was a lot more easier. In Pakistan, one of the key things that we're doing that is probably not put out in the press is that the Pakistani military has actually conducted counterinsurgency operations in the northwest frontier. And what this has done is that this has actually forced the terrorists to operate in a smaller box, which makes it a hell of a lot easier for us to target them with predators. So the counterinsurgency operation kind of acted as an anvil, the predators act as a hammer, and that's why we're successful against the northwest frontier, or the Al-Qaeda core that's operating in Pakistan. And then the last two, one, use precise munitions. This is to avoid the collateral damage. Israel learned this lesson very well when they started their high-value targeting. They used F-16s with JDAM bombs that not only killed the target, but killed 50 other people in the process. When they switched to the Hellfire, there was some collateral damage, but not as much. And this was successful. We do the same thing with Predators. We don't use large-scale munitions. And the final point is more easier said than done, but precise intelligence is obviously required. Not only do you need to know who you're fighting, but you need to know their locations, you need to know their bedtime, their sit-down times, you need to know their pattern of life, you need to know all these things in order to actually conduct a very successful high-value targeting operation. So, with that being said, just to wrap up, again, high-value targeting is a critical component in any counterterrorism strategy, according, at least my opinion. It's not a panacea where it can solve all your problems, but it should be any component of counterinsurgency or counterterrorism should have it as an important facet. So I look forward to your comments on the discussion boards, and I will see you next week.